Khe Sanh, South Vietnam, the 21st of January 1968. Colonel David Lowndes stands inside a bunker on a plateau surrounded by hills, listening to the first incoming rounds of what will become a 77-day siege. He commands roughly 6,000 Marines holding a combat base that, by every conventional measure, should not matter this much. It sits near the Laotian border, far from any city, far from any port, a strip of red dirt and a single airstrip. And yet, the President of the United States has personally asked for a plaster terrain model of this base built inside the White House Situation Room. Above them, day and night, the aircraft never stop. 9 years earlier, France lost an entire army at a valley called Dien Bien Phu, surrounded, cut off, shelled into surrender. Every officer at Khe Sanh knows that name. Every officer wonders, quietly, whether history is about to repeat itself, with American names in place of French ones. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. General William Westmoreland, commander of American forces in Vietnam, had a different read on the terrain entirely. He saw Khe Sanh not as a trap, but as bait, a fixed point where North Vietnamese divisions could be drawn into the open and destroyed by American firepower rather than American infantry.
The base sat surrounded by hills, numbered for their height in meters. Hill 861, Hill 881 South, Hill 881 North. Each one fought over before the siege proper even began, each one a name that would appear in casualty reports for months afterward. By the third week of January, intelligence estimates placed 2 full North Vietnamese divisions, as many as 20,000 men, in the hills around the base. Against them stood the garrison of Marines, a battalion of South Vietnamese Rangers, and whatever could be flown or parachuted in once the roads were cut. Route 9, the only ground link to the rest of South Vietnam, was severed within days. From that point forward, everything the base needed, ammunition, water, food, medical supplies, arrived by air or not at all. What followed was not, in the end, primarily a ground war. It was an artillery war, and increasingly, an air war. North Vietnamese gun crews dug positions into the surrounding hillsides, invisible from the base, capable of dropping rounds onto the airstrip and the perimeter almost at will. Marines counted incoming shells by the thousand across the length of the siege, some days bringing more than 1,000 rounds onto a base barely a mile across. Above them, day and night, the aircraft never stop. Westmoreland's answer to the artillery threat carried a name of its own, Operation Niagara, and it represented one of the most concentrated aerial bombardments in the history of warfare up to that point.
B-52 Stratofortress bombers, flying from bases in Guam and Thailand, dropped their loads in 3-plane formations known as arc-light strikes, each one capable of turning several football fields of hillside into churned earth within seconds. Fighter bombers flew tactical strikes closer to the wire, sometimes within a few hundred meters of Marine positions, coordinated by forward air controllers working from the base itself. Over the course of the siege, American aircraft dropped an estimated 100,000 tons of bombs on the hills surrounding Khe Sanh, a figure that dwarfed the tonnage used in entire prior campaigns of the war. Some historians would later call it, without much exaggeration, one continuous waterfall of ordnance falling on a patch of jungle roughly the size of a small American county. Inside the perimeter, life reduced itself to a narrow set of rituals. Marines lived in trenches and bunkers reinforced with sandbags and steel matting, moving between positions in short, urgent bursts to avoid the next incoming round. Resupply flights became their own form of combat, cargo aircraft and helicopters running a gauntlet of anti-aircraft fire on every approach, some crews perfecting a low-altitude extraction technique that let pallets skid off the ramp without the plane ever fully stopping on the strip. Wounded men went out the same way supplies came in, on aircraft that spent as little time on the ground as the pilots could manage. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more stories like this one. Not every position held without a fight of its own. In early February, North Vietnamese forces overran a special forces camp at Lang Vei, several miles from the main base, using Soviet-built tanks in one of the first armored assaults of the entire Vietnam War. The garrison there fought until the camp fell, and the survivors who made it to Khe Sanh brought with them the first confirmed evidence that the enemy outside the wire had armor as well as artillery, a detail that reshaped how the defenders thought about what might come next.
Above them, day and night, the aircraft never stop. Westmoreland, watching the siege from his headquarters in Saigon, remained convinced the base could and should hold, and he pressed his case in cables to Washington with a confidence some subordinates did not entirely share. President Lyndon Johnson, for his part, extracted a written pledge from the Joint Chiefs of Staff guaranteeing Khe Sanh would not become an American Dien Bien Phu, a promise made under the same White House roof where the terrain model sat under a wooden cover, uncovered only when the president wanted to look at it himself. The press, for its part, treated the siege as the emblem of the entire war, running comparisons to the French defeat almost from the first week, publishing maps of the surrounding hills alongside casualty tallies that climbed steadily through February and into March. Some of that coverage exaggerated the danger the base actually faced by that point, since the weight of American air power had by mid-siege made a Dien Bien Phu-style ground assault increasingly unlikely. The record does not fully explain why the comparison persisted as long as it did, only that it shaped how millions of Americans understood a battle most of them could not have located on a map before January of 1968. By late March, North Vietnamese forces had begun withdrawing from the hills around the base, worn down by weeks of bombardment and unwilling to commit further divisions to a siege that had not delivered the decisive breakthrough its planners in Hanoi had hoped for. On the 1st of April, the 1st Cavalry Division launched Operation Pegasus, an armored and air-mobile relief column driving up Route 9 to reopen the ground link to the base. Marine patrols pushed outward from the perimeter to meet them. On the 8th of April, the road opened, and the formal siege, 77 days after it began, came to its official end. Casualty figures from the siege remain, even now, a matter of some dispute between the accounts that survive. American forces recorded a few hundred dead defending the base itself, a number that later research suggested significantly understated the total once nearby actions and the fighting during Pegasus were folded in. North Vietnamese losses were estimated far higher, into the thousands, though Hanoi's own records from the period were never fully open to outside historians, and the true figure remains, by most honest accounts, an estimate rather than a certainty. The scale of the air campaign left its own mark on the men who called it in. Forward air controllers working out of Khe Sanh coordinated strikes, sometimes danger close enough that shrapnel from American bombs reached Marine trench lines, a risk both sides of the radio accepted as the price of keeping North Vietnamese gun crews from ever settling into a fixed position long enough to range the airstrip accurately. Pilots flying the Arclight missions rarely saw the ground they struck, releasing their loads from altitudes above 30,000 feet on coordinates relayed from spotters they never met, the entire chain of command compressed into a few minutes between a radio call and a wall of detonations rolling across a hillside. What happened next surprised almost everyone who had spent the siege defending the base. In the summer of 1968, only months after Operation Pegasus reopened the road, American commanders ordered Khe Sanh Combat Base dismantled and abandoned. The position judged vital enough to justify 100,000 tons of bombs and a promise from the Joint Chiefs of Staff was bulldozed, its bunkers filled in, its airstrip torn up, and the Marines who had held it withdrew south. Westmoreland had already left Vietnam by the time the decision was made public, reassigned to Washington as Army Chief of Staff, and the reasoning behind the abandonment was debated in military circles for years afterward without ever settling into a single agreed account. Above them, day and night, the aircraft never stop, except now there was nothing left on the ground for them to defend. Historians have argued ever since over what Khe Sanh actually accomplished. Some read it as Westmoreland's strategy vindicated, a fixed point that absorbed and then shattered 2 North Vietnamese divisions at a fraction of the cost a mobile campaign might have carried. Others read it as a diversion, a battle Hanoi never intended to win outright, staged in part to draw American attention and resources away from the cities where the Tet Offensive was about to unfold in the same weeks the siege reached its peak. The declassified record supports pieces of both readings and settles neither argument completely. Colonel Lowndes received the Navy Cross for his command of the defense and went on to complete a long career in the Marine Corps before his death decades later, one of the last senior officers to have overseen the entire siege from inside the wire. The hills that gave their names to some of the war's fiercest small engagements, 861, 881 South, 881 North, returned to jungle within a generation. The bomb craters that once pockmarked their slopes gradually softened by monsoon seasons and new growth.
Today, the site of the old combat base sits largely reclaimed by coffee plantations and quiet countryside, marked by a small museum and a handful of preserved bunker fragments that draw a slow but steady stream of visitors, many of them veterans returning to stand on ground they once knew only through a trench line and a map reference. What they find is mostly silence, a green plateau where 77 days once produced some of the heaviest concentrated bombing of the entire war, and where the outcome, in the end, was decided as much in the skies above the hills as in the trenches below them. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.